Welcome to the joint meeting of the Finance Committee and Planning Board. Tonight's meeting will present and discuss the articles that will be taken up at a special town meeting on Saturday, April 28th at Wilmington High School Auditorium at 10:30 a.m. Before we begin the meeting tonight, I'd like to take a moment of respect for Representative James Maselli. Thank you. The format of tonight's meeting will be as follows. The petitioner will be granted the opportunity to present their article. The public will then have the opportunity after the presentation on each article to ask questions or offer opinions on the articles. Members of the audience seeking to offer questions or comments should be recognized by the chair. You must be at a microphone, and please state your name and address for the record. Once it is determined that the public has had adequate opportunity to ask questions and to offer their opinions, the public hearing will be closed. The Planning Board will reconvene in Room 9 to discuss their recommendations for each article, and the Finance Committee will also meet upon conclusion of tonight's meeting. Recommendations from the Planning Board and the Finance Committee will be provided to the Town Clerk tomorrow as a public record. Residents are reminded that the special town meeting is scheduled for Saturday, April 28th, 10:30 a.m. in the high school auditorium. And now I'd like to turn the meeting over to Michael Sorrentino, Chairman of the Planning Board.
Thank you. Okay, I was asked to tell everyone no updates on the Bruins, please. We will address Article 1 to see if the town will vote to eliminate multifamily housing in the Central Business District and neighborhood mixed-use districts defined in the Wilmington zoning bylaw as follows. 1, to rescind and delete from the Wilmington zoning bylaw section 3.8.15 multifamily use in the neighborhood mixed-use district in its entirety. And 2, to rescind and delete from the Wilmington zoning bylaw section 3.8.11 multifamily use in the Central Business District in its entirety. And 3, to amend Table 1 principal use regulations with respect to the line under the caption residential uses entitled 3.3.5 multifamily housing to read R10 no, R20 no, R60 no, and M, no, NB, no, GB, no, CB, no, GI, no, HI, no, LI/O, no, site plan review, or take any other action in relation thereto. Petitioner.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this working? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the Planning Board, Madam Chair, the FinCom members, ladies and gentlemen. There's no surprise why I'm here, as I stated at the Planning Board FinCom public hearing last month. At last year's town meeting, I supported Mr. Welsh's article of rezoning property on Main Street, near the Butters Road Bridge of neighborhood mixed zone. Also, I supported the article that's the outlay on Lowell Street for the neighborhood mixed zone. I supported Mr. Wright's the over 55 housing on Andover Street. I even supported Mr. Newhouse's rezoning to open a law office and build himself a house on Main Street on Glen Road, because that's what was said. However, I did state at the annual town meeting in 2017 that when Mr. Welsh's article came up, I stated that I'm not against development, I'm for orderly development, but from this point on, I'd be opposed to any more neighborhood mixed zones. And let's try to get a snapshot on what they're gonna look like today before we go any further. After those particular zones, relative to Main Street and relative to Lowell Street, if you laid it out, it's probably 150, closer to 150 to less than 200 units that could actually go there today. And as you know, on Lowell Street, it's Building B when it was Textron, but it's the Lucci building where the yellow school buses are. That's a vacant big piece of property that this mix could go there. Also, Mr. Langone is developing the old Walpole fencing, and right across the yellow buses, ladies and gentlemen, you have about, I think, 4.9, 4.8 acres, and that's also considered neighborhood mix, where they could put these type of developments. And then obviously, as you well know, right on Main Street by the Butters Road Bridge, Mr. Welsh proposes 49 to 50 units. So there is, there is an opportunity for that to happen. So at last month's public hearing, I asked 2 questions. One of those were to you, Mr. Chairman of the Planning Board, so that way we were just crystal clear on certain numbers, and the numbers were correct, Mr. Chairman. Has Mr. Welch submitted a preliminary subdivision plan relative to the rezoning on Main Street last year? And I remember, Mr. Saratino, you replied the answer was no. So back in summer of 2017, when we had the annual town meeting, he went to the town meeting, we all gave him the blessing, AG's office voted for it, and yet he has not even pulled out a permit or even submitted a plan. But that's fine. The next question I asked of Director Valerie Ginrich, according to the new zoning bylaws, neighborhood zone, on page 23, section 3.815, it states that the formula in coming up with the potential, and I'll say it again, the potential number of units per acre, which is 10.89 units per acre, also full potential. I'll also say it again, relative to that amount, relative to condos or apartments, could be developed even on Sharappa's Farms. 680 units could have the potential, not saying that's going to happen, but it does. And we were in agreement that it had the potential to do it. Not saying he's going to do it, but it had the potential. Many factors go into the formula. One of those factors, you can take wetlands and use it as part of the total uplands of property in determining the full potential of units. However, you're not allowed to do that in any residential single-family home. So if you have an R10, R20, R60 zone, it's more restrictive to do something there as opposed into neighborhood mix. Relative to Article 1, what I did was eliminate the multifamily dwelling, which is 10.89 units of condos or apartments per acre. However, I kept the general business aspect of it in the article, which results in a positive cash flow to the town. We don't have to provide any services that would cost money. However, if we allowed hundreds and even, we could go well over 1,000, because it has the potential of happening in this community, or even closer, could go to 2,000. And I'm not being overdramatic here, or potential units of condos or apartments that is allowed today, according to our zoning bylaws, that is absolutely going to put a cost onto the taxpayers. There's no question about that. Case in point, 4 years ago, we built over an $80 million high school. Over $40 million was the state share. Over $40 million was the town share. 4 years ago, I bought into that. I supported it. We want to make sure we give our kids ample opportunity for education. And I come from the school of common sense. I asked the question, the seating capacity. I lived in Wilmington all my life in the 70s. Other than listen to Aerosmith and everybody, I did go to Wilmington High School. And the capacity of the high school was far greater, not a lot greater, by 100 seats, give or take, than the present high school. The question was asked, I asked that question, are we going to be in great shape relative to the town for future growth? Absolutely, we're in great shape. 4 years later today, 2018, we are 96 seats away of full capacity at that high school. And we have the potential of 150 plus condos that could be built today, not including the neighborhood mix of the overlay wherever you decide folks decide to put that. That's alarming, totally alarming to do that. And I'll be honest, I think a lot of folks in this community are not in favor of a debt exclusion, as well as myself. And I'll be honest, a lot of folks in this community would not be in favor of 2.5 override, as well as myself. In closing, let me just say, this isn't the Mike McCoy show. I received 357 signatures that people signed that petition, obviously, to look for the special town meeting. And I just want to thank a few people, because it wasn't just myself. I want to thank Suzanne Sullivan. I want to thank Ralph Asulo, out there working hard to get the petition signed. It was no easy task. And I'm happy to answer any questions, but I'll say it again. I left the general business aspect of it in that, so you can absolutely put a business there, which is positive cash flow, as I stated, and at zero cost to the community. I know we're not going to see 200 or 400 units on a parcel of, say, a business aspect, but it can go in a couple of units or 12 units or whatever they decide to do per acre. So I did not take that out, ladies and gentlemen. Happy answering any questions, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory relative to that. That's all. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Anyone else want to speak?
Good evening. My name is Kevin McDonald. As you know, I'm running for the position of town moderator. As I've been going around town, I've been getting various questions on different articles that are coming up at the town meeting. And I guess for starters, I'd like to ask the board if the board has reached out to town council to see if there's any liability to the town if it should change this zoning, seeing as though the town rezoned some parcels of property and businesses have been purchased by the new owners with the intention and the knowledge that that zoning has been rechanged. I guess the question is, have you reached out to town council to get his legal opinion on the liability risk to the town in engaging in this endeavor to change the...
We haven't reached out specifically with that question, Kevin. Rezoning, so there are certain things that you can do to preserve your zoning rights by filing certain plans, and those types of activities have been happening over the past couple weeks. So there was a filing for an A&R plan, an approval not required plan. It's basically a subdivision plan for both 168 Lowell Street and 635 Main Street to preserve the zoning that's currently existing. We haven't reached out about liability. Zoning changes, they happen, and there are uses, even if this zoning change would happen, there are uses that you can do on those properties, even with the changes. So I'm not sure what liability we would be facing.
Is the town council here tonight?
Yes.
Okay. Have you researched the properties that have changed hands under this zoning to see and identify what we're up against in terms of if this article passes and legal action is brought against the town in terms of people that have not filed their preliminary plans to preserve their rights? Can we get a legal opinion on the town's exposure to liability in terms of the people that have bought the property and now are facing the obstacle of not being able to develop the property the way that they intended when they purchased the property?
Sure.
Good evening, Lou Ross, counsel for the town. I have not specifically been requested or researched any of the title to the properties at issue, but as far as liability is concerned, as to reiterate what Ms. Gingrich stated, zoning changes happen all the time. It's a legislative change. There are things that people can do as property owners to protect their rights from zoning changes, and if they don't do that, then they're subject to the zoning regulations like everybody else. It's not really a town liability issue per se. It's more along the lines of, well, these are the regulations, and I need to use my property in accordance with the regulations unless I have taken steps to have my property become grandfathered.
It's my concern in coming here tonight to get some answers to some questions that have people in town very concerned. It doesn't seem like there's been a comprehensive list that these boards have compiled so that people can make an informative vote based on the limits of exposure. And it's my concern that,
Can I answer that?
is there a commitment from the board that you're gonna do that for town meeting?
I'd like to answer that.
Okay.
The reason we don't have a list is this isn't a board article. The article was put forth by someone without coming before the board. This is a zoning article that didn't come to the planning board to have an open debate at the planning board to come forth to be brought to the town. This is put forth by a resident, so we have not done that.
Okay, I understand that. You folks are here tonight to gather evidence and to come up with a decision, and you're going to be presenting the town meeting with a recommendation.
Correct.
Either you're going to recommend for or against, or you're going to take no action. I don't know if there's any other thing that would be included other than those, but it would be nice if, for example, you go to the Lowell Registry of Deeds site and you identify the properties that have changed hands since that zoning change happened, so that you could identify the owners or the amount of people that are affected by this article, and really the town being affected in terms of any legal action. I'm sure that's going to be a question that comes up at town meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to sum up like 1 minute. You know, we all live in this community. Every single buddy sitting up here pretty much lives in this community. And some folks would like to try to keep it a small town feel. A lot of folks that moved from the city are looking to raise their children in a nice, safe environment. Oldies like myself that lived in this community 59 years, you know, we want to try to keep that hometown feel. And if we take a look at this neighborhood mix, it's just disastrous. We're looking, like I said, 10.89 units per acre. If we continue on this flow, we're going to turn this beautiful town, it's not a town anymore, it's probably a quarter of a city. Let's not make it a full city. You know, I understand there's folks out there, well, you know, you can't stop progress, you can't do this, and it's happening. We control the destiny of this community, the members of the town meeting. And I understand there's certain groups that come to the town meeting. I get it, you know, but that's the whole driven thing about this. Try to keep Wilmington, Wilmington. What's so bad about keeping Wilmington, Wilmington? Plain and simple. That's all, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair, thank you.
Kevin, let Susan talk. Then you can talk.
Good evening, Suzanne Sullivan, 60 Lawrence Street. I had a couple of questions for the planning board. One of them is, how many districts in the town of Wilmington has an inclusionary component to the district of allowing for a density for affordable units, or that has a affordable requirement?
Say that again, one more time.
How many districts in the town of Wilmington, zoning districts, have an inclusionary requirement for an affordability, whether it's a density bonus or whatever that might be?
Just the over 55.
Yeah. Do you want me to answer?
Yeah.
It's the, one of our districts, the over 55 overlay district, has a requirement for 10% affordable units. And there is, within that district, a density bonus if you provide 25% affordable. But that's the
That's
district.
the only district that actually has that.
Currently. But
Currently.
we are working on that, yes.
Okay. So, I don't know, there's a lot of new faces on this planning board that I don't recognize, but in 2003, the McGregor and Associates developed an affordable housing plan. I don't know if there's anybody that's aware of that plan on this board. Well, in that plan, I served on the citizen committee to develop that affordable housing plan. And one of the recommendations in that plan, that was 15 years ago, this was in 2003, was to adopt an inclusionary housing bylaw which requires 15% of all housing over 8 units be affordable. That was the number one recommendation. The second recommendation was offer density bonuses for providing additional affordable housing units, particularly in the redevelopment of underutilized or vacant buildings. So the reason why I support this bylaw change that Ms. McCoy is bringing forward is basically because of that. I don't think there should be any more of these housing developments until we have an inclusionary component. We're really close to our 40B number, and it leaves the town vulnerable. And I think this proposed development at Sharappa's Farm is an eye-opener, and we should wake up to what's going on. It's not acceptable, in my opinion. I mean, I sat at those committee meetings, and the neighborhood mixed use, the purpose of it was not to develop a sprawl-type project like at Sharappa's Farm. And I know that this board voted against it and recommended against it, but that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. And that's a concern. So I think we need to go back and look at this. I would have liked the whole bylaw deleted, personally, and go back to the drawing board, but until we actually get the affordable component addressed in this town, I don't think we should allow any more dense developments. Thank you.
May I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
Hi, I'd like to ask a question, please, of the planning board. I think there may be some confusion about what neighborhood mixed business is, how it came about, what was the intention when that zoning was established?
Sure. So the neighborhood mixed-use district was created, I think it was now 2 years ago. And really the idea for it dates back to the 2003 master plan, when certain areas of town were outlined for sort of a village type of feel. There were actually 3 different areas. One was Perry's Corner, which is the intersection of Lowell Street and Woburn Street, which is where we created the first neighborhood mixed-use district. Another was along Main Street. Another potential was North Wilmington around Eli's. And those were sort of, those are existing sort of nodes of commercial activity. You've got shopping, you've got some restaurants, you've got commercial activity. So the idea, even, 15 years ago, was to add some housing to that area to make it, a lot of parts of town, you can't walk to a restaurant or services, but there are certain pieces of town where you could have a little node of activity where you could not get into a car, you could walk to a restaurant across the street. And those were very defined and very distinct places. And those were outlined for a little bit of a mix. The idea was to add the residential multifamily to the commercial. So you weren't adding multifamily in an R20 residential district, you were adding it where there's commercial uses. And so the neighborhood mixed-use district was created to follow up on that. Historically, Perry's Corner was a blacksmith shop. It was other types of shops with houses kind of intertwined. So historically, it was a village. So it's an attempt to provide certain very specific locations in town where you have that type of village feel. So what we did was we took the general business, which was there already, and we added the multifamily use that we had in the central business, tweaked it a little bit, and allowed it by special permit through the planning board to make sure that it's appropriate where it's proposed and how it's proposed that it's appropriate. So it was created for very specific places to add residential to a commercial area.
Thank you.
Yeah, Kevin.
Okay, let me just begin by saying this. I have a lot of respect for Mr. McCoy. He puts a lot of effort into these actions that he puts forward, and as I go around town, thousands of people say they love Mike McCoy. One guy actually said, Mike McCoy's word is like the gospel. And so, in no way, shape, or form do I mean any disrespect to Mr. McCoy. I think he's a great guy.
We can have a disagreement.
Okay. I realize that you're going to be taking an action tonight, okay? But I want the town council to tell us if it would be prudent for you to take no action tonight, seeing it's Wednesday, and seeing you have from today until Saturday at the town meeting to take an action. Would it be prudent to take no action tonight and then collectively on Saturday morning if you obtain more evidence, then to make your recommendation prior to the meeting.
More evidence of what, Kevin?
Pardon me?
More evidence of what? How many properties
Well,
have changed
for,
hands?
for
or-
example, case law. If the town attorney gets busy and he starts researching case law so that the town isn't put at risk for liability exposure based on taking an action, I think it would be prudent for the board to take no action tonight, to convene prior to the town meeting or at the town meeting, and then take your vote there if you have to make a recommendation, or just take no action and let the town council bring his evidence forward. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who hasn't spoken? Yeah, I know we know what you meant. It's still a Saturday. Go ahead, Mike.
Hi, good evening. Mike Shampoo from the Board of Selectmen currently. So I hope I can express this. The way I view the current zoning is it is a set of tools. And the zoning, in general, is a toolbox. And so the neighborhood mixed use and the, is it central business? I just put it down. Central business district are, that allow for this kind of development are just tools that are there for the planning board and the zoning board of appeals to have access to for the present and the potential future. And I guess I should have started with, there has been a tremendous amount of discussion for the last few years, several years, about affordable housing, but also about housing for seniors. That growing population in our country, but certainly here in Wilmington as well, that want to be able to stay here in Wilmington, but downsize out of the house where they perhaps raise their family, and have a smaller residence that doesn't require so much maintenance or care, and also maybe is more affordable to them. So to me, yes, perhaps more densely populated neighborhood, village-style area with walking paths or ease of walking to services where those individuals can have access to shopping, a haircut, bank, etc., that rises to the level of making a ton of sense. Because currently, as I look at my future, and my children grow and graduate and move on and start their lives, my wife and I will probably look to downsize out of our big house, but I don't want to leave Wilmington. I love it here. But I don't know what access or what avenues there are for me to be able to stay. And to me, the zoning as it is written today provides for the possibility of that kind of residential community. So, listen, notwithstanding people's perhaps objections to the plan that's laid out for Sharapa or plans that were proposed over the course of years for some of the other properties around town, it is just my strong opinion that we shouldn't be overdeveloping the town. Nobody, I don't think, is arguing that we should just continue developing ad nauseum. We want to keep Wilmington a town. But there's a way to do that with character, with the kind of development that's consistent with the fabric and with the look and feel of our community. And I believe that the zoning as we have it today provides those tools to the planning board and to the developers to give us that mixed use type of residential areas. I strongly request and I hope that the planning board will recommend a disapproval recommendation on this article. Thank you very much.
Anyone who hasn't spoken would like to speak? Anyone? I have another question. Sure.
What, I'm sorry, what would be the impact of, if this particular article passes, what's the impact on zoning and the town? If we eliminate completely these items that are mentioned?
Okay. If multifamily is eliminated from neighborhood mixed use and central business, I guess to what Selectman Shampoo was talking about, you would eliminate the possibility of creating condos or apartments in town by zoning. Condos and apartments would still be created in town potentially through the 40B comprehensive permit process once we're below 10%, which in 2020, our numbers show that we will be. So you won't see the creation of smaller units for people to downsize or people to enter the housing market as first-time home buyers created in a scale that makes a little bit more sense in locations that make more sense. Instead, you'll only see them being developed through the state process, through the Board of Appeals, the 40B process. Does that help?
Okay.
I have another question for the planning board, if you don't mind. I'm trying to be very, very clear so that when we make our recommendation, I have a full understanding, because there are a couple of articles that are intertwined here. And I just want to make sure that I'm understanding that neighborhood mixed zoning is comprised of commercial or general business plus residential.
Yes.
So if this article passes, it will remove the residential from that zoning, leaving only commercial.
Correct.
Correct.
So what will happen if Article 53 passes,
Which is?
which is the Sharapa Farm rezoning, request to rezone the Sharapa Farm to mixed use?
The mixed use goes away.
Yeah, so if multifamily is no longer included in the neighborhood mixed-use district and the Sharapa Farm parcel is rezoned to neighborhood mixed use, you wouldn't be able to do multifamily, you would only be able to do commercial uses, so office, retail, those types of general business types of uses on that parcel.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could I just add a comment? Everything that the director said is absolutely 100% correct. I would like to touch upon one thing. Valerie, relative to, we talk about 40B and 10% stock. It's 2020, we need to address that issue. I get that. How many units are we away right now to accomplish that 10%? As we stand right now, are we obviously, what, I think we're down 70 or something like that?
Well, it's an estimate, but that would be my best guess around that number.
All right, I just want to touch upon that. You know, folks out there are saying, well, get scared, folks. We're going to have a 40B come to this community. I would welcome a 40B, not 70. How about a 140 unit 40B? You want to know why? Then we would never, ever have to worry about the 10% stock ever again. That would mean no condos, no apartments in this community. I would welcome a 40B. That would be a godsend to this community, and I think people would embrace that. I'm willing to double that. And for generation after generation, we wouldn't have to worry about condominiums, more so apartments. That's the big thing today, is apartments. That's where the money is, apartments. That's all, folks.
Mike, can I
Sure.
say something? A couple of years ago, when we first talked about the mixed use and creating the village-type districts, I kind of envisioned, you know, we have a unique situation in Wilmington where we have two separate commuter rail lines. I take the commuter rail every day, and I walk to the commuter rail, and there's a great opportunity to create some areas where people can live in a condo or townhouse, walk to the train, you know, walk from the train, pick up dinner, go home, and you know, ideally, you know, we want to get more cars off the road. And if you have people that are, you have environments that are more friendly for walking and biking to trains, seemed like a good idea. It's being done, you know, in West Concord as a nice little village area, and that's a pretty rural town. It's a nice town. It's right near the train. You know, Winchester's a little more urban, but they have the same kind of deal. They don't have a lot of parking around the train, but they have, you know, some nice shops downtown with apartments over. That's what I kind of thought it would look like in Wilmington.
Mr. Chairman, if I can answer. David, I totally agree. I supported the Metro. That's considered smart growth. You can get on the MBTA train, you can go into Boston, but, and I'm not saying I'm an advocate of this, but maybe we really need to think of this neighborhood mix of 10.89 units an acre. Maybe you need to go back to the blackboard and start over again, and maybe, look at it again, but I'm not encouraging that right now at this moment, but I just think 10 units an acre, 8 units an acre, 6 units, 5 units, it's just too much. Let's try to keep Wilmington, Wilmington.
Okay, Kevin.
Question.
One more.
I understand what Mr. McCoy's doing. I understand that there's impacts on services, there's impacts on schools. Matter of fact, I took a lot of heat because I was standing up saying that Wilmington High School was not properly sized. And what I did was I went down to the library because when I graduated, there was a very high capacity at Wilmington High School. So what I did was I went down to the library and I counted the yearbooks. 1978, 1979, 1980, and 1981. When I counted all those graduates, it was over 1,200 students. And Wilmington High School, when they were proposing to build it, is only sized for 960 as their capacity. And I couldn't understand why you would build $87 million high school and size it less than our school was sized for. But my question is basically relative to the scope of the article. We all understand that Mr. McCoy's motivation is to lessen the impact on the school system and the town services. With regard to the scope of the article, if Mr. McCoy was to be in agreement to do this, could this article, maybe we can get an opinion from town council, could this article be tweaked a little so that it was changed so that residential housing could be included in the mixed-use zone, but it was limited to senior housing?
I'd be definitely opposed to that. I support the article. We want to talk about real senior housing. We need to put a bylaw on the books that creates senior housing. Everyone's out there, I want senior housing, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But there is nothing in the zoning bylaw that creates a senior housing. That's where it needs to start.
Okay, I want to answer a couple of things here. I know someone got up and said back in 2003 they were on a committee about affordable housing. I respect that. 2003, I was still on the planning board. I think Rondi was on the planning board. And, we agree with that, affordable housing. We've been working towards that. It's not an easy thing to do, as you know. As the years have gone on, we've been trying to adapt the zoning to stay with the times, to, keep with the smart growth and go with the needs of how the economy changes. And that is what really rules, how the economy changes. What we'd like to say, when the planning board goes to room 9, we're going to have our little meeting and have our discussion as a board. We haven't really discussed this yet, but I know I can speak for the whole board. We're really against this article for many reasons, mostly because of the way it's presented. Zoning goes through the planning board. If someone wanted to make this, it should have went through the planning board. So we could have had a discussion, we could have had public hearings, we could have had people come and on normal nights that they could have had stated how they felt, and that it could have been properly vetted. Sticking this in as a special town meeting is totally inappropriate. And what are we going to do? Each time someone comes up with something that we don't like, are we going to go around and rezone again and again? So some people didn't want Global to come in the corner of West Street. Are we going to go and rezone that area to keep them out? What about other areas of town? We're going to go to room 9, and you guys are going to talk about the next article, which has to do with the Finance Committee. What are we going to do there? You're going to run to buy Sharapa Farm? So are we going to buy the corner of West Street? Why didn't we buy the old dump where they're putting houses up at the end of McDonald Road? There's all kinds of places around town. So are the people who live off of Andover Street more valuable to the people who live in other parts of town? What about the people who live where I live? We have 240Bs near us. Why didn't we buy those lands? I just don't understand the status of this. We have a specific reason of why town government is set up. It's set up to have the Board of Appeals, it's set up to have the Planning Board, it's set up to have the Board of Selectmen and other boards. And that's the way it's supposed to be. If someone wanted to do this as a starting, it should have went through the proper channels to be properly vetted. And that's not how this has been done. Thank you.
I had asked.
Kevin, you've had plenty of chances to talk.
I didn't
and
get an
totally
answer to
respect
my
it.
question. I asked the town council's opinion because we heard from Mr. McCoy, but as you know, at town meeting, somebody could legally come forward and put forth an amendment to this article to change it to senior housing. I'm just asking the town council, can he please give us an opinion if it would be in the scope of the article, if it would pass legal muster for somebody to amend the article so it would include or say specific senior housing?
Sure.
Give him time.
So it would all depend on the specific proposal made, so this is a bit speculative, but if it was to be a relatively minor modification of the proposed zoning, so there's an amendment to the motion on the floor to include that, it probably would be within the scope of the article, but it all, again, depends on the actual motion being proposed on town meeting floor.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so it would pass legal muster if it was properly presented. So let me ask Mr. McCoy again. Based on hearing the town council, Mr. McCoy, and based on hearing you say that we need senior housing, would you now be open to amend this article to specifically exclude multifamily and put in senior housing?
He already answered that. He said no.
And the answer is no, and I don't believe you can do it, but Mr. Chairman, I just got to take issue.
Oh,
All those,
wait a second, I'll let you speak, Mike, no problem. So I won't. I just want to go. Anyone else want to speak? Jeff, did you want to speak? You'll get your chance to close, Mike. You can come back. Anything that was said.
I would just note that we've certainly heard in various forums that there's a desire for mixed opportunities for housing, that people have expressed a desire to, as Valerie Gingrich said, to be able to downsize, get out of their single-family homes and look at different options. My concern is that if this article passes, we're essentially going in the opposite direction. We're removing options for people who may not want a single-family home. Wilmington is still a predominantly single-family community. And certainly there's a lot of value to that, but I think there's also a value in creating a diversity of opportunities for people of varying ages and incomes to come to Wilmington or to return to Wilmington. The other point I would make is that if the concern is the prospect of the Sharapa property being developed for neighborhood mixed use, the route to go is to encourage folks to vote no on that, as opposed to changing a particular zoning tool that's going to have a much broader effect and greater implications. So.
Anyone else want to speak? Sure. I'd like to give everyone a chance first. Susan, you can go next if you want.
Hi, I'm Terry Marciello, Director of Elderly Services. As you know, it's very unusual for me to speak up on a situation or any issues that go on like this in town. But when it comes like this, I am a little concerned. We've been having ongoing meetings. We've actually had Valerie at meetings at the, excuse me, I'm a little nervous, at the center, discussing some of these issues. And the reason that she's come is because the seniors want to be more educated as to the properties that are available for senior housing and want to know, have a better idea of the terms and be able to present that they need senior housing. And sitting back and hearing this, I think in talking to different people, even as an executive office of elder affairs, there is concerns that if this should pass. And then when I hear that an amendment wants to be added on, just like as you were speaking, that's not the proper protocol. In order for this to really work, we have to really work together and make it happen. But in making it, having something that says we can't have multifamily, we can't have condos or apartments, we have a large majority of the population here that are over 65, 60 and 65. The most growing population that we have in the United States of America. So in saying that, I think we really need to put a lot of thought into it, because a lot of work that is mentioned in 2003 and on, these types of things are what the town wants to make sure that their town people get to stay in the town. Will this article make that so they cannot? I think a lot of thought has to go into it. I get it. I think it, the town that people think that it's growing too fast. But is this the right way to do it? Is this shutting off too much and really hurting the elders or the people that put a lot of taxes into this town to make it what it is today? So I think it needs a lot of thought and not just be a quick decision. Thank you.
Last thing, let someone else speak. Let Susan speak, then you can speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I understand everybody's frustration. I mean, one of the reasons why I support this article, like I said, is because of the inclusionary component to it. I mean, it's been 15 years. Maybe this article will actually get people to do something. As far as senior housing goes, I think we all should. I think the Whitfield School site would be an awesome place for senior housing. I think we have to do that. I'm all for mixed use. I was on the master plan committee. I love the idea of smart growth. But what I hate is the idea that this bylaw stands with no inclusionary component to it. And it's bringing us closer to the 40B. I think we need to take a step back. We've already approved projects under this bylaw that are going to bring us closer to the 40B. I think we have to stop it now. And we have a 55 and older bylaw, but we don't have a senior housing bylaw. We need one. It's a different type of building for seniors than it is for 55 and older, and people are interchanging those two things, and it needs to stop right now. 55 and older is not senior housing. They're doing the same thing at Sharappa's. And I'm not here tonight just because of the Sharappa Farm, because they're proposing this at Sharappa Farm. I'm here because I think it's out of control, and there's a contingency building in this town that wants it to stop, and they don't like the way that the town's developing right now. Thank you.
We agree with the over 55. We had the same discussion for the other subdivision, the one up for Ballardville, right? We had the same discussion.
Yeah, both of Andover, yeah.
Yeah, not in the same thing. Same discussion. People,
because we've
people
already
interchange the two things, and they're not correct.
They're not interchangeable. They're
People
two
over
different
55
things.
still work and drive.
Thank you, because that needs to be on the record, because people are using those two same terms. It's not the
We
same.
agree with you. We've made that point.
Yeah, and we've already had 2 failed 55 and older developments in this
Also, too,
town.
That's correct.
Thank you.
That's why Yentl Farm is a field now. Okay, Kevin, but we're going to
Okay.
move on right after this, unless anyone else wants to speak after Kevin. Mike will have the floor, and we're going to move on, okay?
Okay,
Okay, Kevin.
for fear that there may be some confusion in the minds of people at home, I just want the board to clarify for everybody that this zoning change to the mixed-use district isn't just focused on the Sharappa Farm, which is not even zoned that now, but it's for the entire town.
That's correct.
Is that correct?
That is
Okay.
correct.
So this zoning change, where it's for the entire town, could possibly leave the town exposed to liability. And in terms of Mr. McCoy's desire to see a 40B, we need roughly 70 units of affordable housing to meet our 10%. But as you know, people continue to keep building. And so as people continue to keep building, that mathematically that number changes. And so it's incorrect to say that if we build a 40B, that we're going to be all set for the rest of our lives in terms of our 10%, because that's not true. When people keep building, all right, that number changes. So I just want to make that clear, and I'd like the
is
board to
correct.
confirm
That's why
that.
it's an approximate number, it's a moving target. That is correct. Sure, Jeff.
I don't want to monopolize this, but I think it's important to make the point, as much as it's been countered here multiple times, Town Council has indicated that there is not liability if the zone changes. There are zoning changes that take place pretty much every year at town meeting. If that was the case, we'd be constantly under a host of liability. So just for the viewer's sake, there is not, the town is not going to have some kind of liability that is unique to this particular zoning change.
And when we go to room 9, we're going to have some Form As of a couple of people who are protecting their properties just for that reason, so.
I think Mr. Hall misunderstood town council.
No.
Okay? We need to get some work done by the town council. I hope the manager requests the town council to do this, to study the case law relative to any lawsuits that have come forward when a person has bought a piece of property and they've obtained financing based on, for example.
Okay, Kevin, you made your point. Point's been made.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to speak? Because we're going to move on. Okay, Mike, you got the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll sum it up. And I say respectfully, just to take a couple issues on your comments, and I say respectfully, Mr. Chairman, when you make the comment that, what are we supposed to do, buy this property, buy that property, buy that property? The answer is no. And relative to Sharappa's Farm, for over 3 decades, they received tax relief from the town, plain and simple. And the other issue that 2 previous speakers said ago, well, it seems like we're going to rush this in. This is no different than an annual town meeting. You have a public hearing, you have to go in and obviously make a vote. Now, I'm not going to ask town council, I think everyone knows yourself that you want to probably make the vote tonight, but you're not rushed to make that vote. If you really wanted to make the vote and really think about it, you can make it at another time. But I'm not saying to do that, and I get it. You know, all I'm saying is this is no different than the annual town meeting except for one word. It's a special. It's going through the process. Just like when somebody wants to rezone a piece of property, they put the petition in, goes to the planning board, just like we are here tonight. It's a public hearing, then it goes to the annual town meeting. There's no magic. That's how it is. And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Okay, planning board's done. We're going to move to room 9. We'll leave it to our fine friends in the finance committee. And my wife did text me, but I won't give you the score. 2-2. Oh, I didn't, no offense taken. No offense taken, like I said. We can agree to this. It was 2-2.
Okay, Article 2. If I can have your attention, please. Article 2. To see if the town would vote to raise and appropriate, transfer from available funds, or borrow pursuant to any applicable statute, a sum of money for the Board of Selectmen to acquire by purchase, gift, or eminent domain the following real estate commonly known as the Sharappa Farm. I'm not going to read the entire description. I think that everybody has a copy of this and they understand the area that we're speaking of. So, the petitioner, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission, and ladies and gentlemen. Let me say from the get-go, we're looking to, hopefully the town purchase this property, not because there's a rezoning going on that parcel, it's because of the public good, and I will demonstrate that, Madam Chair. I apologize, I did come in earlier, I don't want to be ignorant, but obviously this is the only way the camera can pick this up in the audience. I'm happy to get some brownie points and face it towards you if that means anything.
No, that's fine the way it is.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, so I'm going to run a little. All right, thank you, Madam Chair. What I'm going to do is this. I feel bad not showing it to you. I want to talk about the wetlands. I'm going to get my little cat toy here. This is 62.5 acres, the whole perimeter of the Sharappa Farm. If you folks want to come around, you know what I'll do to make it easier, Madam Chair? I'll go through the presentation on the photographs and the maps, and then I'm done with that. I'll just leave the best one up for last.
Whatever you want to do
All
is
right, no, I
fine.
just want to work so you people can see it. Thank you, Madam Chair. So, in this here, these maps are here, and I'll just say it right now, Madam Chair. It's the Wetland Mass GIS Basically, the DEP has approved all these maps. If you take a look, folks, and I apologize, Madam Chair, if you take a look, this is the perimeter of the Sharapa Farm. As you can see, that spot, that spot, that spot, that spot is part of wetlands, and there's different variations of it. But if you take a look at that, it is a lot of dry, good property up there. There's a lot of highlands. And obviously, if you were to put homes on that, they're not subject to the neighborhood mix where you can utilize wetlands as part of the good land. They're not subject to that. So absolutely, you could put units in there. But that's not the reason why we're here. You know, so that's the point I want to make. Now, there was another small photograph that you can see it a little bit better. You can see that, but this is a little bit of color, if I could. It's not, you know, it's a little better, but it's, that, I love that one better, to be honest with you. But this here is a aerial shot of the property. So if you take a look here, once again, it's just like that map there, ladies and gentlemen. That's the perimeter of Sharapa Farms. You can actually see the house, and it looks like there's some contracting yard in there, to be totally honest. It's an aerial photo. But you can see all the nice highland in that area. And once again, that's that one, that wet mark, that's that wet landmark, etc. So if you take a look at it, and it's estimated, and I'll go on the high side, someone said it's about 6 to 8 acres of wetlands. Let's say, for argument's sake, it's 8 acres. Let's say it's 10, which I think is closer to 8. You know, you're talking a lot of 50 acres plus that is actually, would be fantastic to be on that property. All right, let me go to another photograph, Madam Chair. I'll show you folks first, just to let you know. I'm going to show it to you folks, and I'll just put it right up here. You know, it was Mr. Walsh, he said it was high tension wires that property. I have my notes with me. I just, yeah. See this red mark? Right, and I'll explain with the notes because I can read it a lot better. This is the high wire tension. It does not go through Sharapa Farms. That's Sharapa Farm there, folks. This high wire tension goes through here. And actually, it comes out onto Andover Street by Emerald Lane. You know that beautiful nice log cabin house that they have on Andover Street? It's right by there, it goes over Andover Street, and it skirts Benevento's property. So unless, and I have the better language, unless they've done some work here in the past 3 years, maybe National Grid has, and I'm not disputing Mr. Walsh what he said, but he said there's high wire tensions on that. According to this, and I have the information even better, I can elaborate, I forget, it was a 70-town community that got together with all the improvement resources, and it was a flyover of 70 different communities. And Wilmington was one of those communities, and that's why we have that. And it shows the high wire potential. All right, thank you.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question related to Mr. McCoy's presentation? With due respect, sir, I'm not sure how the characterizations of the property as he's describing it have anything to do with whether or not the town can pursue requirement. And perhaps you're getting them to move it up. I feel like you're arguing against the Article 53.
I'm sorry.
Well, I guess it feels to me like more like you're arguing for your Article 53 than you are for Article 2.
No, that's absolutely incorrect. I just want to clarify, according to the town maps, for example, the high tension wire, the one that I showed you, that map is called Ortho Project 70. Town participated, including Wilmington. The flyover was done in 2015, and it shows no high wire tensions on the farm. I'm just saying, the gentleman demonstrated, he said there was high wire tensions on the property, but there's not. That proves that case. And I just, people need to know what they're buying. And I'm not here because of a rezoning of Sharapa Farms. I'm here for the public good, and I'm going to get into that in about 2 minutes. So I showed that, so all right. All right, here now. All right. Where's that one more photograph?
Mr. McCoy, could you pass the picture that had the wetlands on so the Finance Committee could take a look at it?
I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to pin now.
Okay, then don't, that's all right.
And Madam Chair, I'm going to end up with just a few things. Look at that. And then I'm just going to get into the presentation relative to the property and talk about it in its own. Okay. All right. All right, I want to. All right, here we go right here. I'm gonna, all right here, folks, we're gonna be talking about eminent domain, we're gonna talk about the public good. Here is Sharapis Farms. It is approximately 62.5 acres, that area there. Over here, this is property that's owned by the town of Wilmington that runs adjacent to Route 125. That is 34.5 acres. And on the wetlands map, there is hardly any wetlands except for that spot there and that spot there. That gives you a total, if we did buy the farm, 97 acres, just that alone. Now that the town of Wilmington, if they do purchase Sharapis Farm, we own the property in front of Sharapis Farm, right? That's north of 125. There is 2,237 feet frontage on 125. You never have to go down Andover Street if we ever was to develop that. We have over 2,200 feet of frontage on Route 125. And then south of Route 125, this one over here, that spot there, that is 17.5 acres. What this whole thing comes up to, folks, is 114 acres of utilization. You have Sharapis Farm, north of 125 and south of 125, a total of 114 acres of property. All right, so I just want folks to take a look at that. Now we get into the relative to financing. I know the town will be spending out of free cash $850,000 for the water main break or the highway. Also, $941,800 for the enterprise software that our wonderful assistant town manager demonstrated to us. And she did a great job, as a matter of fact. And also $150,000 for, I believe it's the Pilcher. I don't know exactly. Looked at something, but I believe there's $150,000 for the Pilcher program. After that, there is no more funds coming out of free cash account and the capital stabilization account through fiscal year 2019. Therefore, leaving us $16 million in free cash and $10 million in the capital stabilization fund. Between both accounts, that leaves us with $26 million in free cash. No matter how you cut it, simply it's two accounts. Over the last 2 years, and you folks know far better than I, over the last 2 years, we were able to put a little more than $4 million one year and just under $4 million another year. Each year, we had good returns in free cash. So in the last 2 years, we brought in close to $8 million in free cash the last 2 years. The numbers speak for themselves. Over the past few years, we've had historically put in between $3 to $4 million every year in free cash, more closely to $4 million, ladies and gentlemen. The town of Wilmington has conservatively put the money into those accounts, and I give credit to the town manager and obviously to his staff. Obviously, there is risk. However, there's a huge return to the town of Wilmington in acquiring Sharapis Farm. Simply, it's for the public good. Come next year, ladies and gentlemen, we will conservatively have close to $30 million in those accounts for fiscal year 20. Now, I know we got $10 million in one account, and we're going to have $20 million probably in next year, fiscal year FY20's account in free cash. 1 second, please. I apologize. I'm jumping around here. Okay, thank you. Right here. All right. Relative to the dollar amount, I have no choice but to put a dollar amount from the initial vote of the Board of Selectmen on March 26, 2018. The board voted to look into taking the property by not only eminent domain. When I created that article, it was a scope of many things you could do. And I'll say it. Anybody can, on the town meeting floor, put an amendment, take out eminent domain if they want. You can't increase the scope of the article, but you can absolutely decrease. And you can't do affordable housing on that, okay? So you can't change that. So No, can I finish my presentation?
Yeah, we're having a little
The whole
bit.
night it's like that. Probably better off, can you hear me better like this? All right, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to follow protocol. And I'll tell you, WCTV, you gotta do a better job on these mics. Okay, I need a little humor here. All right, thank you. I mean, I'll say it out loud. Can you hear me on WCTV?
I can hear you.
Man, I wish I'd known this. You guys do a great job and I love you. But man, I wish I'd known this like an hour and a half ago. So I know my wife, when she saw the others, honey, I couldn't hear you. And then I had to turn the TV up and then maybe you guys turn the volume at the station. And I'm sorry for a little comic relief here, Madam Chair. But anyway, let's see. All right. The bottom line is, and I get it, the board changed its direction, that's fine. And the town manager, to his credit, said it probably may take over 30 days to go get an appraisal on that. But we did have 39 days from that day that we could have done something. I'm not saying we could or we couldn't. But when I show those aerial maps from the DEP, those are maps that absolutely show wetlands. Now, I don't know, I'm not an assessor, they have to go on the property, I don't know. Okay, all I'm saying is I know we have information in-house, but yet, when you're talking millions of dollars, you absolutely, as the manager, you want to do it right. I get that, okay? So I look kind of ridiculous going on the town meeting floor by not having a dollar amount. I look like a fool, but I am going to propose a dollar amount tonight, and I'll get into the public good, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you, Madam Chair. I don't mean to turn my back on you because now I have to project my big mouth. So anyway, all right, I'm going to, all right, let's see. All right, I'm going to, all right, however it changed, all right, I'm going to offer a dollar amount tonight. I heard from a couple of backdoor sources that 8.2 million is the highest number that was offered to buy Sharappa's Farm property. I'm going to offer, we take 4.2 million from free cash and 4.2 million from the capital stabilization account for a total of 8.4 million. The reason for the 8.4 million is because we want enough money in there and we want to make it a little high enough so that way we can get the job done. Some of those funds will pay for the professional appraiser to come in because he has to do that job. Now, if town meeting approves the 8.4 million, those funds are set aside until the appraiser finishes their job. So in other words, we're not going to lose that money if the folks at the town meeting approve it. It's going to sit there until the appraiser does his job. But you've got to come up with a dollar amount. If I did come up, I look like an idiot. So why is, let's see, the appraiser finished their job. Why, let's see, all right, here we go. The only way for this really to work is that take it by eminent domain in the language. That's the only true teeth we have as a community. So in a nutshell, I believe the Sharappa family will do better with the town of Wilmington and get more money. Now I understand it's going to be no easy task. You're going to need a 2/3 majority vote from the free cash account and 2/3 a majority from the capital stabilization account because it's eminent domain. Now I know if you take it just with a land purchase, it's just a simple majority. That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. So that's the only reason why we have teeth in that. And it's going to be difficult to get a 2/3 majority, no matter what you do. And I get it. Because of the words eminent domain, if we take those words out, it's useless. Because the town could sit down with the Sharappa family and its attorneys, and that's not happened. And by the way, the town did sit down with the Sharappa families on 2 occasions, I believe, 2004, 2008, and they withdrew the offer, not the town. And I got to give credit again to the former town manager, Kyra, and it was on WCTV. You guys did a great job, and he had to look really close to the paper and talk about an offer. So the town has shown an interest in buying it, absolutely, without a question. The reason why we are looking to get the property is because it's for the public good, plain and simple. For years, we gave property tax discounts on the Sharappa farm because, in part, it was partly used or relative to under 61A of agricultural land tax liens. By purchasing the property for the public good, by using the eminent domain process, is that we could use it for many town uses under municipal uses. We could use it for cemetery expansions. I've been on the town board of selectmen a long time, and now we're running into a crisis on the cemetery. And I know, and think the superintendent does a fantastic job, but I don't think the answer is to rip up the streets in between and put graves. You know, I think it's disrespectful. People gotta walk over a couple of 3 graves to get to a spot. What about the senior citizens that wanna see a loved one that has a difficulty getting through? So that's another reason, because we're gonna be running out of cemetery space, folks. It's a place, we talk about a substation for years. I agree with Mr. Lau, we need to take a look at it and actually try to do something. Now we have the property to do it. We never say, well, where it can go. There's always an idea here. There's so much potential to take Sharappa's Farm along with the town-owned property that we actually own today. Open space for some environmental, recreation fields for the town. A farmer's market, grow produce and fruit and sell it. Educational programs for young and old or elder. The garden club, open space. I'm not saying we become like the Boston Commons, but wouldn't it be wonderful to have a nice area similar to the Boston Commons where we could go with our families and enjoy ourselves as a community, as a gathering, to see all your neighbors? And last but not least, something like a North Reading that I think would be superb. I think it's what, only 20 acres that they have in Ipswich River Park. I could be wrong. Something like a North Reading, the Ipswich River Park. The list is endless. There's a huge umbrella for those uses. And once again, folks, we're not going to be the boogeyman as a local government coming in, kicking you out of your home, kicking you out of your business because we want to take it. We have, over the years, under eminent domain, the town forest. But I think that's what, chapter 90 or something, where it's like a concern, you can't do anything out there. We took property, eminent domain, Madam Chair, I believe on Salem Street, and we took eminent domain, which was a smart move. It was the area to expand the ball fields on Wildwood Street. It was the old motorcycle club, and believe me, that was a good thing that we did. Once again, I want to say, folks, this isn't the Mike McCoy show. Approximately 400 people signed that petition to acquire Sharappa's Farm. And that says something. You know, I want to thank Mr. Fasulo and Suzanne Sullivan going out there, you know, with the petition. And, oh, I have some more on this other side. I'm glad I looked at it. Let's see. No, I did. Just a little off. So the bottom line, folks. The only way we can really take this property is by eminent domain. And I'll say it again, we're not the boogeyman, it's a wonderful government. There's sometimes you need to take things for municipal use, local municipalities, the state, the federal government, it happens. We did give tax relief, and the Sharappa family, wonderful people, I know some of them, great, great people, but this is for the public good. And it's not buying this property, Madam Chair, members of the FinCom, it's because of rezoning. Absolutely not. It's not because of that. We gave tax discounts for many years, Madam Chair. You know, and it would have been wonderful if the Board of Selectmen somehow was informed of that. But be it said, I know they're in the legal right, and I get it, but this is the only teeth that we have in doing it, and it's for the public good, and it's a benefit to this community. And I really hope that you folks look favorable to this. And once again, I suggest that we take this money we're not gonna have to pay any interest. This is a one-time deal, folks. To buy this property by eminent domain, we don't have to pay interest, go for debt exclusion. It's in the free cash, and we have it. And I'll tell you something, it'll be perhaps one of the best investments we'll ever make. And we're gonna look at that someday and say, you know, I'm glad we did it. Now, I know it's gonna cost more money down the road to develop it, but it has all that potential. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, over 2,200 frontal feet. I wrote 125, that's amazing. And that property is beautiful. There's hardly any wetlands, and south of that is 17 acres. Talk about municipal use, expansion of the municipalities. We're at a crunch. We're at a crunch where we need to do something. All right, thank you, Madam Chair, and I really hope you folks look favorable. You folks are our financial people. And this is for the public good. Not because of the rezoning. We should have that opportunity, Madam Chair, and the dollar amount, I believe, will do the trick. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a minute, Mr. McDonald. I believe we have a question from the Finance Committee.
I do. Through you to Mr. Hull. Mr. McCoy suggested financing through free cash and capital improvement fund. where this is an acquisition and not a capital improvement, would that be doable, or is that not doable?
It would be doable from with use of free cash and capital.
It would, okay.
Yes.
And also, Ms. McQuaid had stated that only how many hundred thousands were coming out of free cash this fiscal year?
1.2 million out of free cash.
No. Earlier, it said that in the warrants, only a couple hundred thousand was going to be coming out of free cash. And I believe it's over 2 million that's coming out.
No, I talked about the 850, the 900, 160, 2 million.
No, there's other in there for the, yeah, in the
So
budget.
just to be clear, in terms of what's proposed for transfer from free cash, $3 million is proposed to transfer from free cash to capital stabilization. 941,800 would purchase the enterprise software. 850,000 is for the water line over 93. 150,000 is for the Pilcher Drive sewer pump station.
Thank you.
So the total amount from free cash is $4,941,800.
Great, thanks.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Okay.
yeah.
I have a few questions.
Just state your name, please, and the address for the record.
Kevin McDonald.
Thank
and
you.
As I stated earlier, I'm a candidate for the position of town moderator, so some of my questions are relative to running an informative and efficient meeting, and I'd like to have some questions answered tonight. Has there been a 21E environmental study done by the town or anybody that you know of to identify any chemical contaminants in the soil on this property?
I don't believe the town has done that, as we don't have ownership of the property.
Okay, has anything been filed with the Board of Health from the family or anything like that?
Mr. Hull,
The Board of Health here? Board of Health
or the
agent?
Board of Health?
I can certainly speak to the issue that the town has not commissioned any kind of a 21E study, and the Board of Health, as far as I know, there's not been any filing about contaminants on the property.
With regard to Mr. McCoy's comments about an easement, electrical utilities going through the property, I don't believe there's any electrical utilities overhead going through the property now, but it's my understanding that there's a 250-foot wide, if I'm not mistaken, easement that's owned by National Grid that goes through the property. And has the town council, based on having this information that we're going to be going to town meeting to possibly take this property by eminent domain, can the town council tell us the extent of work that he's done to research the title and the easements on the property? And can he confirm that, in fact, that there's a 250-foot wide easement that's owned by National Grid on the property? And second part to that question, is the article in order? Can you take a piece of property by eminent domain without the language being in the article that states that you have to also take the easement by eminent domain?
Good evening, Lou Ross, Town Council. We have not done any work at all related to investigating the title of this property, where we don't have a contract for it, and we have not done any work additionally related to a taking by eminent domain because we don't have a town meeting vote for that yet. Normally, that usually occurs after the town meeting vote authorizes it, and after either there is a deal with the property owner to buy the property, or if no deal can be agreed upon between the town and the property owner, right before there's going to be a taken by eminent domain. So it's a little bit premature to do any of that type of investigation. So we'll wait to see how town meeting votes.
I'm not sure that I agree with the town council. I'm a little disappointed that our town manager and the Board of Selectmen did not request the town council when they knew weeks ago that this article is going to be coming before town meeting. It's not an article of a few dollars, it's multiple millions of dollars here. And the figures that I heard that the property was under agreement for was higher than Mr. McCoy's. And so if you go to take a piece of property by eminent domain and it's under contract for more money than you're taking it for, what happens in a case like that? My guess is that the family, their attorneys could bring suit against the town saying that you're taking the property for more money than we have an agreement for. Question, town council, if a property is under a contract, a purchase and sales agreement, and a developer has that under agreement, if the town takes a piece of property by eminent domain, would the town have to pay not only the value of that property, but would they have to pay, would they be legally liable to pay the builder's loss of profit?
Mr. Ross, would you kindly address the mechanics of taking a piece of property by eminent domain? So, because I want to stop this line of conversation, if you could just wrap it up for us.
Sure. The
Thank you.
mechanics include, you get a town meeting vote, there's an appraisal performed that's a prerequisite to the taking, there's a notice that's sent to the property owner. Normally as a courtesy, that's not legally required, but there is a notice that's sent to hopefully encourage negotiations, and then there's an order of taking, usually signed by the Board of Selectmen in this case, for multiple uses. Once that's done, the property owner is entitled to its damage awards, and let me just clarify. Once the order of taking is signed and recorded at the Registry of Deeds, the property owner is entitled to the damage awards, and usually at that point, if their property owner does not like the amount of the damage award, they can proceed against the town legally to argue about that. But that's all very far down the road.
May I ask you a question, Mr. Ross? When you take something by eminent domain, is it normally market value that you're paying in general? Are you trying to get to market value? Or is it at a discount?
It's not at a discount, it's fair market value.
Thank you.
What I've done is I've done some research, and I've discovered in California there have been municipalities that have actually filed for bankruptcy. And one of these municipalities actually filed for bankruptcy as a result of a lawsuit. So my concern is we have, I put in a public record request for the amount of retirees that are collecting benefits.
Okay, Kevin, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt you now. I really want to get back onto this piece of property
Yeah.
and whether or not we should be
Absolutely.
buying it. Would you mind?
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you.
Sometimes I use something to make a point because when you go to, if you're a town moderator and you have to confer with legal counsel to protect the town or to get a question answered, it's good to be prepared before the meeting. And so in terms of a municipality facing the risk of legal action, I'm just using the example of communities in California that have filed for bankruptcy. And it's my concern that we have people that are collecting retirement. What do these people do if the town files for bankruptcy because of a lawsuit? Do they lose their pensions? Does that get discharged in a bankruptcy?
Excuse me, Mr. McDonald. I think Attorney Ross has addressed the liability the town would have and the legalities that the town has in order to take a property by eminent domain. So I
think we heard him differently because I heard him say that the property owner can take legal action against the town.
if they're unhappy with the price that they're given, but he also did mention that it would be around market value. So it's unlikely that there would be a suit there if you're giving someone market value for your property.
Right,
But in
but we
any
didn't have
event,
one question answered. The question that we need answered is the town at risk? Is he aware of case law where a developer has a purchase and sales agreement on a piece of property, and that person has maybe engaged in engineering and other types of things, is he entitled to any type of damage awards for his loss of profit? So if Mr. McCoy brings forth a dollar amount for $8.4 million, okay, in number one, the property owner has a purchase and sales agreement for 9 or 10 million. In the town meeting, let's say that the town meeting votes to appropriate $8.4 million to take this by eminent domain. And then we see that the property actually is going to cost $15 million. Does that void the action of the town meeting because the town only appropriated $8.4 million or whatever it is? Can we have that question answered by council?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Ross.
Thank you. Only the property owner is entitled to the damage award after taking is performed by the town. Someone who has an interest in developing the property and perhaps a contract for purchasing the property is not entitled to any award. And as far as, I'm not aware of any case law or statute that would invalidate an appropriation by the town that is to be used for an order of taking. I'm just not aware of anything like that at all.
I guess very simple. If the town appropriates $8.4 million and there's a purchase price of $10 million, how do you buy something for $10 million when the town only appropriated and only agreed to allow the town to spend $8.4 million?
The price for the eminent domain taking is not related to a developer's contract with the property owner. The price is related to the fair market value. So the town will have an appraisal, and the hope would be that the appraised value is equivalent to what the town has appropriated. So that's what would be paid. If the appraised value is higher, then the town would have a decision on its hand as to whether or not it would want to appropriate more money or take some other action.
Thank you. Okay, Mr.
just
McDonald,
a
we're done with this
clarification.
line of questioning.
Yeah,
Okay,
just a
it's gone on for
clarification.
too long.
Just a clarification. So basically, he said the town would have to make a decision on whether to appropriate more money. So my concern is, if the town appropriates this money and it's not enough, the property owner wants to sell the property.
All right, as I said
Does
before,
that-
Mr.
does that-
McDonald.
Are they not able to do that?
We've already asked and answered. Thank you.
Teresa?
May I?
Yes, please.
So Mike Shampoo again from the Board of Selectmen. I'm going to try to be concise. I guess I don't believe that this is an acquisition or by eminent domain or any other for the public good. I believe that it's an acquisition and that this article comes about in response to the article to develop the property. So I think it has been argued, no, it's not in response to that. It's in fact for the public good. Well, okay. But I disagree with that, and I think it's fairly transparent that this article is here today only because there is the other article on the regular town meeting. That's A. B is, frankly, the whole thing is cart before the horse, in my opinion. I strongly think that the town should be having conversations with the property owners and evaluating what our options are. We ought to be engaging with their representatives. And frankly, conversations are ongoing with those representatives. If we can negotiate a price with those property owners, then once that price is mutually agreed upon between the buyer, the town of Wilmington, and the seller, the Sharappas and their representatives, then we can, and that negotiating process should happen in executive session with the Board of Selectmen and the town manager working with representatives from the Sharappa family. And once that price tag is agreed upon, then and only then, frankly, we ought to schedule a special town meeting that the Board of Selectmen can call and bring that price tag to the people of the town of Wilmington and allow the people of the town of Wilmington to decide as to whether or not to make that purchase based on the proposed use for the land. This notion of acquiring this land for the public good doesn't carry water with me, and I don't think it should carry water with the people of this town. You know, we've heard some hypothetical uses. They're all fine. You know, the idea of a substation has some merit, but it's not, these aren't stated specific reasons. They're hypothetical, maybe uses for that property. That's not sufficient in my mind, and I don't think it should be sufficient in anybody else's mind for a reason for eminent domain. I think that's disrespectful to the owners. And I guess, lastly, I really just think that this article is really a moot point. We're doing the work of this article already. We're having negotiations, we're having discussions. Let's continue that process, and let's try to do this the right way rather than shoving it through. I hope that you folks will recommend disapproval of this article and speak to that at the special town meeting to the residents that attend. And at that note, I'm going to go watch a hockey game. Good luck.
Just 1 minute. 1 minute. We have a Finance Committee member that would like to speak.
Mr. McCoy, how did you arrive at the $8.4 million price tag?
I've been in this town a long time. I know folks. You know folks. I've heard a couple of. I'll step back. All right, I'll use my. Yeah, no, I know a lot of folks. You know a lot of folks. I've heard backdoor amount of 8.2 million. So I upped it 200 grand to go to 8.4. So it'd be 4.2 in one account, 4.2 in the other account. I think it's a win situation. You know, I'm not Nostradamus where I can predict the future. And just to make a couple of quick points, if I could, or if you're satisfied with that, you know, and I'll say it at least, you know, talking about, and I want to get to Mr. Doherty for a moment. You stated about the free cash, and just don't take my word. I asked the manager, he walked away. After all the expenses, FY 2019, we're going to have 16 million in free cash and 10 million in the capital stabilization account. So the money's there, you know, and I got to give credit to the town council. I think he does a good job. I forgot in my presentation, bottom line is absolutely, when the appraiser goes out there, it's absolutely at market value. We are not going to steal this property from these folks. It's market value. And once again, under R60, there's wetlands, so you got to take that into consideration. I mean, I did some quick math. In the perfect world, if it was 100% dry, you're looking at 45 homes. I'm basing it on 8 acres, could be more or less, that are wet. We're talking 38, 39 homes. Could be a little less, a little more, I don't know. Obviously, you need the appraiser to take a look at it, but believe me, we're in the ballpark on that, folks. Thank you. And I'll say one more thing, I do call Mr. Shampoo, he left. Mutual respect for him, and I appreciate his comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
At a past selectman meeting, our town manager stated that he reached out to the attorneys for the Sharapa family, and he didn't hear back. And so it's my suspicion that if an attorney represents a client that has a purchase and sales agreement, and that attorney starts negotiating with a community, that there could be a risk of legal malpractice there. That I'm not an attorney, but I'm guessing that there's some risk to that attorney as to bringing some type of liability onto his law firm for legal malpractice. So maybe the town manager can come forward and ask and answer a simple question. Have the Sharapa attorneys been engaged in dialect or have they been communicating with you, Mr. Hull, recently?
I did have a conversation this week with attorney Bill Crowley, who is representing at this point all of the family members, the Sharapa family members, and he has advised that at this point, until the town meeting takes place, that he is not recommending that they engage in any kind of negotiations or discussions about the property. But I would point out that there is no clear indication that the property is under contract. I think that's speculative at this point.
I'd like to think that I come from the same school as Mr. McCoy, the school of common sense, that if an attorney is representing a family that wants to sell their property, that he would have been in dialogue with the manager if it was not under contract. It makes no sense for him to not want to talk to the manager, knowing that the town wants to buy the property. So it's if I had to bet, I'm not a betting man, but if I had to bet, I'd bet money that the property's under contract and the lawyer understands the law, and he understands that if he engages in this type of dialogue, that he's risking legal malpractice.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald.
We
We have somebody else that wants to speak.
Yeah, we still didn't have the question answered that was asked before about the easement that National Grid has. So there's no article here that is asking to take that easement by eminent domain. So that's the question that wasn't asked, okay? The other question is, this property here, I know Mr. McCoy is concerned about impacting our services, impacting our schools. This property here is different than the other properties in town that we've seen that have had 40Bs built on it. Those other properties were serviced by sewer. This property is not serviced by sewer. Abutting this property, I believe, is the town of Andover water supply. And so there are a lot of things that we need to find out to get it right. So can we have an answer to the fact that this article doesn't include an eminent domain taking of the National Grid rights in their easement going through the property? And can we also confirm what I believe is the truth, that there's no sewer servicing this property? Is the sewer commissioner here?
I'll have Mr. Ross answer your question regarding the easement and what happens when you take a property by eminent domain.
So the article, well, presuming that the motion is the same language as the article, it would be sufficient to acquire the easement by eminent domain, but most likely, in my experience, those easements are allowed to maintain because it reduces the acquisition costs for the property, and so that would be my guess here, is that we would acquire the entire lot, but leave the easement to National Grid intact. But if we did want to acquire the easement, we would have that authority, assuming that the motion is similar to what's drafted in the article.
Thank you. Are you satisfied with that, Mr. McDonald?
Yeah, thank you. But could we get somebody from the Water and Sewer Commissioners here to confirm what I'm saying, that there's no sewer servicing this property, and that there, in fact, is the town of Andover water supply there? Just so that the people in town understand that if we're going to pay millions and millions of dollars for a piece of property that, in my mind, might be limited on what can be developed there in terms of impacting a groundwater supply, no sewer, a very large easement going through there by National Grid.
Okay, we've already discussed the easement, so that's done.
Okay.
So
The one
what
thing
was
I
your
wanna
other question regarding the sewer, whether or not there was septic or sewer on that property?
Yeah. Can we, is there anybody from the Water and Sewer Commissioners here tonight?
Don't believe so, but I think Mr. Hull can speak to that.
The answer to that question, Mr. McDonald, is correct. There is no sewer to that
Okay.
property.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to have to ask
I
you
just
to
got
sit
to, I
down
just got to
now.
point out this eminent domain thing.
There are other people that are waiting to speak, and you've...
National
you've been
Grid,
here.
National Grid
Mr.
takes
McDonald,
properties
please.
by eminent domain. Do you understand that?
I understand, but
You do understand
I'm
that a
asking
public
you,
utility company takes property by eminent domain? You
Mr.
do understand that?
Yes.
Okay.
You do
Just
not
wanna
need to
get that
speak to
clear.
me with that tone. Please take a seat.
You keep interrupting me, and you keep disrespecting me, and you're
I
disrespecting everybody that's trying to get
I
information.
mean no
You do.
disrespect to you. I'm just trying to let other people speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Suzanne Sullivan, 60 Lawrence Street. I just want to address some of Selectman Shampoo's comments that he already left, but I have the 1998 annual report from town meeting when the town took by eminent domain the Wildwood Street property, which is now a softball field. And inside this article, it says, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate a sum of money for the purpose of acquiring the following described parcel of land and buildings thereon for municipal public purposes, and to determine how said appropriation shall be raised, whether by transfer from available funds by borrowing under the provisions of the general laws, chapter 44, and by combination thereof, and further to see if the town will vote to authorize the selectmen to purchase, take by eminent domain, receive as a gift, or exercise an option for said purpose, blah, blah, blah. So I want to just say that it's not unusual for a town to take a property and not have a defined use for that property. We've done it before in the town, and we can do it again in the town. This is for a good public purpose. I'd like to read an excerpt from the updated 2015 Open Space Plan. Although the population growth is slowed, a build-out analysis performed in 2000 shows that current zoning would allow over 1,200 new residential lots. Development at full build-out would significantly reduce land available for active, passive recreation while increasing the demand for such amenities. So what I'm saying is if you take the 12,000 new residential lots, and this was from the 2000 census, and you divide that by 18 years, this is 2018, you come up with about approximately 62 residential house lots a year that could be built before we're at capacity. And we've met build out. We probably haven't done that, but we're probably pretty close. So that means that we don't have any other land left. This is it. Sharappa's Farm is the last piece of land that we could potentially buy for public use, for town municipal uses, to better the quality of life. There's study after study that shows that if you want to keep your taxes down, if you're strategic about the open space that you have in your town, it can not only increase the quality of life, but it can keep taxes down. It can keep service needs down. And I mean, that should be, there alone should be something that I would think the Finance Committee would be interested in making sure happens. Because we have our backs up against the wall as far as what the municipal needs are, especially if you read the facilities plan that just came out. And if we're going to continue to build this town the way that we're building it, and we need have all these needs, we're almost at capacity with a brand new high school. These are serious issues. You know, our taxes have gone up, and I don't mind, you know, paying money to educate children. I had 3 children that I put through the school system. It's my time to give back, because the money I paid in taxes all those years didn't cover their education. So I get that, and we should. But we shouldn't be building the town out in the way that we're building it out and not protecting open space at the same time, and that's my issue. I served on the Open Space Committee back in 2000, the second open space plan that the town ever had, and there was 3 properties in town that was desirable for us, and that was that the Open Space Committee identified, and that was Sharappa's Farm, Yentile Farm, and the property up on Mill Road. The property up on Mill Road was developed into conservation subdivision. We couldn't get that property. That was a beautiful piece of property. We got Yentile Farms, and now with Sharappa's. Those were the 3 most desirable parcels because they were the most that had strategic uses for the town. And the only reason why we're here isn't because there's the actual proposal, it's because that land's up for sale. If they were going to put houses on the current zoning, I would still be here asking for the town to buy that land. When I was on the Board of Selectmen back in 2003, we tried to negotiate to buy it because they wanted to sell it then. Same thing happened in 2008. The town tried to negotiate. The town wanted to buy it then. They want to sell it again, and I think the town should negotiate again. But now it seems like if we don't take it by eminent domain, we're going to lose it. And we're going to lose it to something that is going to be undesirable for the town. If that rezoning passes, it's going to be terrible for the town. Or maybe that zoning won't pass, and then maybe something else can come in there, like a 40B. Who knows? Or a 40R, like they have in North Reading, right by that border. So all I'm saying is this has nothing to do with the actual development. It has everything to do with the fact that this parcel of land is up for sale now, and it's not the first time that we've wanted to buy it. And it's not like any other parcel, as people have said. Somebody spewed off a whole different bunch of parcels. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with this particular parcel, which is number 3 on the open space plan when I served on it in 2000. It's up for sale now. The time is now. The time is right. I think that we need to buy it. It's the best interest of the time to do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to let you in on a little secret, okay? This is basically the easiest way to make money in your entire life. Not work for it. So if somebody comes before the town with a proposal and they say, we want to do this to this piece of property, and it's a bluff, and they can't do anything to the property, and their motive is to grind the town out of money to buy this piece of property, how much of a laughingstock would we be if that is the case? This board should be diligently investigating this property. Nobody here knows that there's an easement there. Nobody knows that Andover gets their water supply there. Nobody knows that it's not serviced by sewer. Nobody knows if it's contaminated with some type of chemicals that over 100 years could have been in the ground. So people at town meeting are going to come there and they're going to want to be informed. As a moderator, you have to be neutral. I can't go attacking one side or the other. I got to be fair to both sides. And so I would like this board to take no action tonight, perform due diligence, get some information, and if you feel compelled to take a vote, do it at town meeting. But please, don't take a vote tonight based on no information. Don't take a vote and make the town a laughingstock or a mockery because somebody is going to threaten the town with 1,500 units when it's in a groundwater protection district. There's no sewer. And so you got to look at that angle too. Look at the angle like, hey, I'm gonna build 1,500 units there. Screw the town. Let's get them to pay $10 million for it and give me a couple million for getting this agreement in you and see you later. So you got to look at that aspect. That's a possibility, right? So please, don't take any action tonight.
Thank you very much. So I think everybody's had enough opportunity to speak, and we've heard all your comments and appreciate them. And if the petitioner wants to wrap it up for us?
I'm going to wrap it up quickly.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, you're our financial advisors. I really wish you take a look at it. Once again, we're not buying the property because of the zoning. We're buying for the public good. And we're going to look at this someday. And I hope you look within yourselves and vote, recommend approval. We're going to look at it someday and say, you know, it's the best investment we made in this town. It's a place of beauty, a place where we can go. And there's a lot of property out there. And I'll just say this. I know that this will be tough, a tough task, to get a 2/3 majority vote to win these two articles. It's Saturday, it's beautiful, weather, people at Little League, church activities, yard work, and obviously a lot more. And I gotta give credit. You know, the development community is well organized. The builders and realtors, they got it down to a science. They know how to get people to the town. So I'm just encouraging you good folks, please come to the town meeting, tell your neighbors, get a babysitter for the kids, tell grandma, grandpa, watch the kids, do a little yard work on Sunday, get there Saturday, and I'm telling you, it's gonna be the best investment we ever made. Madam Chair, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that concludes our public meeting. And the Finance Committee will now adjourn and go into our own conversation. Thank you very much. We'll see you at town meeting on the 28th of April.